What's up? This is Jay from Beekeeping from the Basement, and today we're doing our very first product review. I want you to say hi to the Hive Butler. So, I've known about this product for a little while. I've seen it from afar, and I gotta tell you, at first I thought, well, it's kind of cool. It stores comb and, can protect things and whatnot. Do I really need it? And I wasn't quite sure. And luckily, the fine people at Hive Butler said, hey, you want to, try it out? Tell us what you think. Give us your honest, raw answers for what you experienced. And I was like, sold. Sure, let's do it. And here I am. I've used this now for going on 3 or 4 weeks at least, and I've used the heck out of this thing. At first, I thought, well, why don't I clean it up for the viewers, and why don't I, make it look all pretty and whatnot. And then I started to think, you know what, you guys, you want to see this thing with propolis on it. You want to see this thing after it's really been used and really get the real response to it. So I hope you don't mind, but this is what it looks like after it's been used an awful lot. And guess what? It's still holding up just fine. It's in great shape. So I got to tell you, I've been really surprised at this. It's really made a difference in the different things that I do in the bee yard. So let's get into why it's cool, challenges that I've had with it, and why you may or may not want to consider adding it to your yard. All right, so jumping right in. How do you normally store your combs when you've gone to the yard and you pulled all your honey off and you're about to take it home? What do? Well, I normally put it inside of a super, right? Well, supers don't have any bottoms, right? So what happens when a couple of them fall over, or you're carrying it and they fall out? You damage your comb. Well, if you're like me, I can't stand damaging my comb, right? As soon as this stuff gets damaged and it's leaking all over the place, it's not as pristine. If you sell comb honey, oh my goodness, you can't sell a big frame of honeycomb to a restaurant or a chef if it's got a big gouge in it. You just lose all your value. So this is typically how I've been carrying, high value product from the yard and back to my shop where I extract or I preserve it somehow. So this is how I normally do it. When I first started out, I was storing it in like tubs like this. As you can tell, this is just not a solid long-term solution. So this is sort of like what you do your first year when you're trying to figure out and get your legs underneath you and figure out what to do next. Don't do that. So meet the Hive Butler. So here's where this thing really shines. The Hive Butler holds about 10 frames, or it holds 10 frames. It holds deeps and mediums and shallows. It's got a whole lot of room. Now I run all mediums in my operation, so I have plenty of room underneath here. But as you can tell, there's slots that are guided for each frame. Normally you'd hold it like this, but I want to make sure you see it. There's slots for each frame, slides right down in there. And if you got real wavy frame, if you run a 9 frame and a 10 frame box, or you just have wild comb, really big stuff, if you're going to slide them next to each other, sometimes you worry that you're going to damage one frame to the next. Well, this has got a whole lot of room in between them, so it makes for pretty easy, secure storage for your frames, and I like that a lot. I want that added insurance of that little extra space, and I like the fact that I really can't move these in this channel. It really, it helps my operation at least. So again, you just slide it on in here. It holds 10 of them, and there's a whole lot of room at the bottom. And it's pretty durable, as you can tell. I've sort of used it an awful lot. I've really worked this thing over. And I like the fact too that I bang things around in the yard. I tend to toss things or drop things or something usually happens, right? Well, I like the fact that this thing is not made of cheap plastic, right? That's gonna fall apart. This thing is super durable. Not only that, but it's food grade plastic, which is awesome. You're like I said, when you first start out, you go to the local big box store and you grab a bunch of those tubs or something like that, and in the end it's not a long-term solution. It's not safe for your honey. It's not what you want to do. I sure like the fact that it's food grade and it's durable. This thing is super strong. So let's move on to the next thing, right? We've talked about how we store comb and how we transport it from the yard and back, but what else can this thing do? Well, right after I got it, swarm season kicked in. Oh my goodness, there's been a lot of swarms this year. Holy criminy. So I started to run out of equipment, right? Or I've been in, I was on the road and I'd get a call for a swarm. And, what do? Well, this doubles as a swarm catching box. This is pretty awesome. So you can leave the frames in here or take them out if you got a big swarm. But if you take them out just for visual, this thing was pretty easy to hold up in one hand and knock the swarm into there. And then what's cool is they got a bunch of different lids. Well, this is a ventilated top, right? Ventilated top's important. You want those bees to have the airflow or be able to stay cool when you're transporting back to your home yard or your holding yard, be it as it may. So I really like the fact that it's got strong, easy to grab handles, and I was able to grab it, knock that swarm in there, throw the lid on top, and boom, bada bing, I was on my way. With the swarm in tow. And then again, you saw I had those frames in there. It's kind of a good idea to slap the swarm on top of those frames and have them drawing or hanging on that comb as soon as possible. You know, a lot of times people will grab it, the swarm, you know, in a regular super. Well, if you have a bottom board and a top or whatever and you're trying to bang it in here, these are all coming apart. And I like the fact that you can go up, walk up there, have a really big catch basin if you got a giant swarm, or the swarm is spread across, you know, let's say a holly bush where, you know, it's spread across 3 or 4 branches. You want something really big. You don't want something small. And so this can really pay off in, you know, tenfold if you can really have a big catch basin to grab that swarm. So I appreciate that. Also notice they put these little handy dandy holes in here that you can zip tie. If you got to travel really far, you don't want this lid flying off. I kind of like that. It's kind of cool. The other thing is that this lid doesn't come off very easily. It's not going to just fly off when you're driving around or when you're just tossing it around. You actually have to use 2 sides, 2 handles to get it to open. I think they designed it that way. If they didn't, serendipity, it actually worked pretty well to be able to not have this thing fly off. So that was kind of cool. And then it's also worth mentioning, since we're talking about tops, they also have solid tops. If you're going to do any long-term storage, or, you know, think about it, like if I'm storing a bunch of honeycomb, I'm probably going to want a solid top. I don't want to have any aroma of, you know, tons of honey coming off, because I can create robbing in my yard. So this is a little bit more secure to keep it sort of closed up, away from pests and other stuff. All right, so let's talk about storage. So I mentioned, you know, how we catch a swarm, how do we, you know, get the swarm back to the yard, how do we transport big, thick frames of honeycomb without damaging them. Well, what do we do after we've extracted? What do we do with the wets? A lot of times I'll bring the wets back to my yard and the bees will clean them off and then they'll be dry. Well, how do I store that dry comb? Some people don't have those out yards that I do, where I keep the comb outside and allow the airflow over them to keep the wax moths off. Some people store comb in their garage. Well, this is kind of cool because you can actually store the comb in here, and these will all stack. All the Hive Butlers will stack on top of each other, so you have a great storage system. You also have a good solid top there to try and deter any wax moths. Worth mentioning though, this isn't airtight, right? It closes to it, which is great, but just be careful, because I have heard of beekeepers that store their comb and think it's fairly airtight, and that wax moth can get in there. So if you're into that, you can use paramoth or other crystals or something to try and keep the wax moths away from your comb. Whatever your beekeeping style is, follow that. But I kind of like the fact that you can store these things if you want in your garage or your shop or wherever it is you're storing your comb, and the fact that they stack. That's pretty darn cool. Good thinking. I like that. So we've talked about some pretty cool stuff. You think that's it? Wait for it. There's more. So we've talked about catching swarms. We've talked about grabbing that honeycomb from your yard, bringing it back to your shop or your house without damaging the comb. We've talked about storage. Well, guess what? This thing can also double as an uncapping tank. So with a proper attachment, you can actually slide another tub with the bottom missing into the top of this thing. You can punch out this little hole here and throw a honey gate in there, and guess what? You just uncapped your frames. All the frames are dripping into the bottom here, and you can capture that honey down below and bottle it just like that while you're waiting to put your frames into the extractor. So not only is this great for catching swarms, great for moving stuff, you can also use it to uncap and kind of capture that dripping honey for when it comes time to extract. So pretty darn cool, great idea. I've also heard they can be used as a bee vac, which is pretty awesome. This one tote here can be used for so many different things, and that's why I'm a big fan of it. I think it's pretty cool, and I think you should check it out. All right, so let's talk about something else that's near and dear to my heart: raising queens. So I raise a lot of queens, and I'm constantly manipulating frames, hives, nukes, you name it. If you get really into this, you'll end up constantly, I mean, it's like this is a chess match, right? I'm moving this over here, that over there, this over there, that over there. If I'm not splitting, I'm combining in a single yard constantly. I don't know how many different ways. So, what do I normally do, or what have I done in the past? I'll take my frame out. It's got queen cells on it, or the queen, or whatever. And in the beginning, I had a little frame rest. A lot of people keep those on the outside. And you know, sometimes you get to the point where you just like lay the frame up against something. You know, when you're working in your hive, you sort of store it like this. Not a great idea. It's not a great system because inevitably the frame falls over, or you know, all the bees climb up off of that frame onto the hive you laid it up against. God forbid your queen falls off and your day is ruined that way. You know, you can't really store, you know, a lot of times I try and take it off and I store it in a super nearby. But guess what? Like that super's sitting on the ground. I could have smushed the queen by accident somehow. You name it. So, what I use this a lot for in the last couple weeks is I'll take my frame with a queen on it or whatever, and I will slide it in here. Take my ventilated top, and I secure that queen inside the tub. She's not flying away, she's not crawling away, everybody's staying near, and I know I got a top on top of that. I really, really appreciated that. That made a big difference, especially in a yard where I got queen cells going in every different direction, and it made for kind of a challenging split session or whatever. So this has been really handy to store all the queen cells in there. Also, you know, because of that gap, the queen cells had a whole bunch of room in between the two frames, so none of them got smushed. A couple times I even got nervous, and I was like, well, you know, maybe I should move the frame over just a little bit more so that, you know, there's extra room. You can do that fine because you got 10 of these slots. You got a whole lot of room to grow and to figure things out. Typically, when I'm doing splits, I want to have at least a frame of honey to put on the outsides of my my nuke boxes or my supers or whatever. So it was kind of nice to be able to find a honey super, pull one frame, put it in here on the outside, then put another frame of brood, then the frame that I have the queen on or the queen cell next to that. And I guess what I'm doing is I'm building my next hive out using this as a storage or holding container. And I like that. I got it all positioned. Okay, I have all the different frames I need. Okay, now I can grab those and put them in my super, throw a top on there, and I'm on my way. I've just made my split. This definitely helped me do that. I never would have gotten that out of a plastic tub where everything's falling all over the place. It isn't practical. It wouldn't have worked. So that worked out really well for me, and I appreciated it. Okay, so let's talk about, we've talked about the pros. We've talked about, the different ways that the Hive Butler's been designed to help you. Let's talk about some things that are challenging. At first I thought, well, this is a lot of money. I thought, it's a tub. Is it really worth the extra investment? Because everybody out there is struggling these days, and we're all sort of trying to mine our pennies and make sure that we're investing in things that are worth it. I got to tell you, I think it's worth it. What happens when you smush a queen? What happens when that, like I mentioned earlier, that frame of honeycomb tips over and gets a gouge in it and you can't sell it anymore? You've already paid for the tub in one of those situations. We don't need to get down to the nitty gritty of like how much does a queen really cost. But think about it. You just, let's say you just damaged a queen, or she flew away, you smushed her. Now you got to buy a replacement queen, or you got to spend the, at least usually a month or so before your next queen is up and running. You got to spend a month of time trying to breed a new queen, or make them split and raise a new one. That's a lot of time. Time is money. And if you can't sell that frame of honeycomb, already you've paid for, in my situation, you paid for like 2 of these. So the con is really not a con. I think that, if you're willing to invest in your yard and willing to invest in your bees, this is a great solution to it. So, I would say, everybody is different, but kind of value what you put your time and your money into, because it usually pays off. If it costs some money, it's usually worth it, and you get what you pay for. So that's my 2 cents. It is big. I drive a truck, luckily, so I have a lot of space in the back. It can be a little bit big, investment in space inside your vehicle or whatever, but I think what makes up for that is the fact that it can double or triple, or it can do so many different things. It doesn't just have to sit there and hold frames inside. You can do a whole lot with it. So I appreciate that. That's really not really a con either. I also like the fact that you can see through here and you can tell how many frames are being stored in there right now without having to take the lid off. That's kind of cool. And again, I mentioned I really like the fact that it's durable. So yes, it is on the bigger side, but sometimes you need stuff that is this big that can hold and do so many different things. So again, that's not really a dig on them. I think they've designed a really good product that does so many different things. Clearly, they're beekeepers and they know what they're doing. Something else I should mention is I really like the fact that you can email, pick up the phone, Facebook message the Hive Butler, and immediately I get a response back. I think in this day and age, that's a rarity, unfortunately, and I like the fact that I know who they are. I can contact them right away. It's a family business just like we are, and I know they're trying to make a difference and do something good for the beekeeping industry, and so I appreciate that. I love the fact that it's made in the USA as well. Everything that comes with this box is made here in this country. I believe they're manufactured in Indiana. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure, and I like that. I feel like we're trying to keep things local and support our local small business owners. So kudos to you for doing that. Okay, so there's my first product review. This is the Hive Butler, and as you can tell, I've used the heck out of this thing. I hope you don't mind that it's not clean and pristine for you. I think it's much better for someone to be talking about a product when they've actually used it. Too many times in this world, people just say what they think would work or not work with a certain product without actually putting their hands on it. And I wanted to make sure I did this. I want to make sure I used the heck out of this thing before we talk about it. And again, I think it survived. I think it did its job, and I think you'll appreciate it. So the fine people at Hive Butler have said that any of you viewers that are interested in purchasing or grabbing your own Hive Butler, you can use the code Williams and get 10% off your order. So that's pretty cool. They're really trying to take care of our followers, and we appreciate that, and we appreciate you. So go out there, check it out, do your own research. TheHiveButler.com is pretty cool. Great website, gives you a bunch of great information and good videos. They got Facebook and other social media. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, info@williamshoneyfarm.com, and I'm happy to tell you more about my experience or answer questions, or definitely direct you to somebody who can answer your questions. So have a great day, go out there and make a difference, and I'll see you soon.